Hello, guys. Hope you're all doing really well, and everything you have going on in your life. I look forward to talking to you today about this wonderful subject. It's always been a subject that's been very interesting to me. I've always loved the study of the endocrine system and the glandular system because I've found it very fascinating, part of our anatomy in our bodies. So I really look forward to sharing this information with you, and I hope it's really, really informative for you. And I hope it helps to give you a very clear picture of how these systems work in our body and how it's so important to help them to function correctly so that our body's organs and other areas of our body that are reliant on these glands, to work properly. So I'm going to get into it. I'm not going to waste any time by talking at all. I just want you to all know that this is such a very important area of our body that we need it to be working as properly as it can, because it really shows up so much when people have other areas of their body that's not working like they need it to. Like, for example, your hormones. Your hormones can never really be balanced and working correctly if your glands aren't working correctly in your body. And there's so many other different functions that goes on that we are so reliant on these glands. So that's why I really want to, get into this subject and help you to have such a deeper understanding on how we can take care of these glands the best we can, But okay, I'm going to get into it. And at any time as you guys come on to listen to me, if I do have some people listening today, just feel free to ask me any questions or make any comments you like, and then I'll get to them over here in the live feed as soon as I can. But for any of you, though, that are just watching this video back because it's hopefully going to be very informative and I want to share it in other groups, then, you can always send me a message if you have a question for me too, But all right, let's see here. At first, I'm reading the bullet points over here in the post that I made to help keep me kind of on track with the order and how I want to talk about things, The first one I say, I will be having a talk about the basic functions, what the basic functions are for our glands, and some of the symptoms we can experience with these glands when they are not functioning right. And then I go on and say, we'll be talking about how important the master glands are in helping the other glands function correctly. Yes, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start talking about I'm going to start with the master glands first and talking about them. And then I'm going to go into talking about the other glands and how they work as well. And today I will be sharing some of a good percentage of the information about the functioning of the glands and the symptoms we can experience when the glands are dysfunctional, whether they're either hypo or hyper conditions. And I will be sharing that information out of Dr. Bernard Jensen's Iridology book, the volume 2. This is the book I'm going to be sharing that out of. He has these charts in here that, they look like this for anyone that's curious. See, it has the function, and then it has the acute and symptoms and the chronic symptoms. And you can really say that the acute symptoms are in the hyperactive stage and the chronic symptoms are in the hypoactive stage. And I'll be explaining the difference pretty much in a nutshell. Hyperactivity is when the gland is overactive. Like, for example, when you have a hypoactive pituitary gland, you can have giantism. That's the reason why people will get tumors there, and the tumor will keep growing and growing and growing. And that tumor in that area of the pituitary, it makes them their bodies continuously to produce too much growth hormone, and then that's what can lead to giantism. And that's the reason why every single one of the people in the world that have had major giantism, characteristics, they had a tumor on their pituitary gland. And but then on the opposite, when you're in a hypoactive stage, that gland won't produce enough growth hormone, and those people can be very tiny. They have small bodies and be very under height. I mean, they'll be shorter than normal. They'll, and things like that. Sorry guys, hold on just a second. Kaylee, can you knock down the air back a degree or two? I put it up too high earlier. I'm getting a little hot, Thank you guys for being patient. But okay, I'm going to keep going. So I'll be sharing that. But first, Dr. Jensen didn't put anything in here about the hypothalamus and how important the hypothalamus is. So I had to go do some research in some other location, other sources of information to help me to be able to talk to you about the basic function of the hypothalamus. I really enjoy talking to people about the hypothalamus because I think it's such an overlooked gland that's so vitally important. I really think that the hypothalamus is the most important gland out of all our glands because it truly is the master gland of all, because it's kind of like the big brother to the pituitary gland. In all of society and most all of society and the medical association, they've always called the pituitary gland the master gland because it is so responsible for so many other hormone production and functioning of the other glands. So I can see why people would say that, but when really all my research has shown me that if we don't have proper working hypothalamus, then we can't have a proper working pituitary, and then so forth and so on, with all the rest of the glands. So I'm going to share some of this information that I found on the web that talks about just the basic functions of the hypothalamus and what it does and what it helps us with, and that way that you can get a better grasp of it. All right. It says, what is the hypothalamus? The hypothalamus is a small region in the brain. It's located at the base of the brain near the pituitary gland. They're very interrelated, connected, And while it's very small, the hypothalamus plays a critical role in many important functions, including releasing hormones, regulating body temperature. That is one of the things that helps us to have a proper body temperature in our bodies on top of the thyroid. But that's the reason why the hypothalamus, the pituitary, they both have such a influence on the way that the thyroid functions, And then also maintaining daily psychological cycles. That's why a lot of people have emotional imbalance and mental dysfunction sometimes is because they have a weakness in their hypothalamus and also probably their pituitary too. And because there are a lot of people that talk about that the hypothalamus is so connected to our emotion center of our brain. And if you actually look at the master glands, the hypothalamus and the pituitary, they are right below the amygdala. That's the emotion center of the brain, And then the hypothalamus helps to maintain daily controlling the appetite, helps managing of sexual behavior, it helps regulating emotional response. And its anatomy and function is it has three main regions, each one containing different nuclei. But it goes on and it says the anterior region, I'm not trying to be too scientific with my explanation because I don't want to lose you and make this thing boring. I'm just telling you the information on here that I'm reading that's I think it's some of the most important parts to share with you, Well, the first one is a I can't pronounce these words, corticosteroid release hormone, or it's called abbreviated CRH. It's involved in the body's response to physical and emotional stress. It signals the pituitary gland to produce a hormone called ACTH. ACTH triggers the production of cortisol, an important stress hormone. So again, if we're not having enough proper function from the hypothalamus, then the pituitary won't function correctly. So again, I'll show you that connection to the two glands. Then the next hormone is TRH. It stimulates the pituitary gland to produce thyroid-stimulating hormone. So see how you have that connection between the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the thyroid, And it also says TSH plays an important role in the function of many body parts, such as heart, gastrointestinal tract, and muscles. And then the next hormone that the hypothalamus produces is GnRH. It causes the pituitary gland to produce important reproductive hormones such as follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. And those are very important for women and their hormones and to produce enough of the hormones they need for, having babies and things, And then the next one is oxytocin. It's a hormone that controls many important behaviors and emotions such as sexual arousal, trust, recognition, and material behavior. It's also involved in some functions of the reproductive system such as childbirth and lactation. And that's another thing that a lot of people, they talk about. When we don't have enough oxytocin, then we can't have the right proper levels of our emotions and our behavior and things like that. And then going on down, another one is the vasopressin, also called the ADH hormone. It regulates water levels in the body. It says when it's released from the hypothalamus, it signals the kidneys to absorb water. And then the last one is the somatostatin. And somatostatin works to stop the pituitary gland from releasing certain hormones, including growth hormones and thyroid-stimulating hormones. And see, again, when the hypothalamus isn't working right, then the pituitary won't work right. And then when the pituitary doesn't work right, it's not going to help the thyroid and all these other glands that are responsible. Because it's kind of like a chain. It's a chain from the hypothalamus down to the pituitary, down to the other glands, And it goes on, it says that this region of the hypothalamus also helps regulate body temperature through sweat. It also maintains circadian rhythms. These are physical and behavioral changes that occur on a daily cycle. For example, being awake during the day and sleeping at night is a circadian rhythm related to the presence or absence of light. It's just what it is. It's showing that sometimes as humans, and I've talked about this before in my post, is it is talked about how certain humans, they'll get their circadian rhythms of their sleep and wake cycles out of whack, and they won't wake up early enough in the morning and let the sun shine in their eyes so it can keep them on that correct circadian rhythms, and then at nighttime go to bed when the sun's close to when the sun's going down, when that signals your body to produce more melatonin, or actually your pineal gland to produce more melatonin, so then you can start to go to bed at a decent time, and also we look too much at the blue screens at nighttime, and when we look too much at the blue screens, that messes up the circadian rhythms, because again, it's the presence or absence of light. And then it just goes on. It talks about the middle region, the posterior region. I won't go into all of that, but what I will talk about is some of the different conditions when the hypothalamus doesn't work right. Like you can have a growth hormone deficiency, you can have birth defects involving the brain and hypothalamus, you can have tumors around the hypothalamus, you can have eating disorders, you can have just a few different things like that, And then let's see, it says you could also have hypothyroidism, hypopituitaryism. This disorder happens when the pituitary gland doesn't produce enough hormones. While it's usually caused by damage to the pituitary gland, the hypothalamic dysfunction can also cause it. Many hormones produced by the hypothalamus directly affect those produced by the pituitary gland. So see, again, this makes perfect sense when you go back and you look that the pituitary and the hypothalamus have such an intimate relationship. So that's why I really call them the master glands, because of that reason, So yeah, that's very important. And you also, some more of the symptoms you can experience when you weak hypothalamus is usually high or low blood pressure. These are all signals that could show that you have a problem or a weakness there. Body temperature fluctuations, unexpected weight or loss or weight gain, changes in appetite, insomnia, infertility, short stature, delayed onset of puberty, dehydration, frequent urination. There's many different things, and sometimes these things can, they can, connect to other things that we can experience too. So the more you can narrow it down and figure out what exactly it is, and that's also where an iridology reading is very critical. It's very important to help, because I can actually see where you have a strong weakness at in those areas of the brain by looking at the weaknesses in your brain, But it goes on, it says that the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland are so tightly connected that it's often difficult for doctors to determine whether the condition is associated with the hypothalamus or the pituitary gland. These are known as hypothalamic pituitary disorders. However, there are hormone tests that can help shed light on which part of the body is the root cause. But again, sometimes the hormone level tests aren't as accurate as like iridology, again, because of one reason. You know, your blood work and your hormones can fluctuate so much back and forth, especially when we're on this detox journey and trying to help our bodies to retain or get back to homeostasis and back to balance, you know, that it's hard to really understand, you know, what what is really the actual accuracy of those tests, you know. But it goes on, it says, the hypothalamus is arguably the most essential of the endocrine system. By alerting the pituitary gland to release certain hormones to the rest of the endocrine system, the hypothalamus assures that the internal processes of your body are balanced and working as they should. See, that's very important. You know, it just goes on, you know, and just keeps on talking about how that, you know, hypothalamus is so important to help our endocrine system and our endocrine and our parasympathetic and sympathetic systems of that endocrine system, that they'll work right. You know, it just also, it's the part of the brain that maintains the body's internal balance. The hypothalamus is linked between the endocrine and nervous systems. It's the link. It is the link between the endocrine and the nervous systems. And then the hypothalamus produces releasing and inhibiting hormones, which stop and start the production of other hormones throughout the body. It plays a significant role in the endocrine system and is responsible for maintaining your body's internal balance, which is known as homeostasis. To do this, the hypothalamus helps stimulate or inhibit many of your key body's processes. You know, so, you know, that's the high rate of blood pressure, body temperature, fluid and electrolyte balance, including thirst, appetite, and body weight. You know, I mentioned some of those for sleep cycles, you know, just so many of those different things. But okay, I think that really goes over the hypothalamus really well. And thank you for being patient with me, because I thought that was an important gland to really put a lot of focus on first, because of how important it is in its functions to help the rest of our glands. But now let's dive into the pituitary gland, and let's explain how important that one is to all the rest of the glands. You know, and I'm going to get that information, you know, here from Dr. Jensen's book. You know, the pituitary. It also helps with human growth hormone production. These are the functions I'm reading off of his book here. Human growth hormone production, thyroid stimulation and regulation, adrenal stimulation and regulation. That's why there's also a thing that they talk about, and I just recently made a really interesting post about this, that on Facebook, that there's a connection called the axis of the hypothalamus, pituitary, and the adrenal. You know, adrenals, they have that connection. It's called the axis. You know, I'd have to show you the picture, you know. But goes on, it helps with, the pituitary also helps with ovary and testes regulation, sex drive and reproductive activities regulation, controls or stimulates water absorption by the kidneys. So see how a lot of these things that the pituitary does, the hypothalamus does too. So they're kind of connected again, you know. And regulates glandular system through the hypothalamus. See, you know, that connection. And fat catabolism or breakdown. It helps your body to break down fat better, you know. Well, things that you can have that can be symptoms when you're in the hyperactive stage or the acute stage is large, thick bones, excessive growth, frequent urination, excessive thirst, rapid weight loss, excessive glandular stimulation. See, that's all in the hyperactive stage. That's all in the stage when it's producing too much of the hormones and it's making the gland become overactive, you know. Sorry about that. My ear was itching pretty bad, you know. All right, and some of the chronic symptoms, or what you could call hypoactive or underactive symptoms, would be excessive weight in hips and thighs, inability to lose weight. That's the reason why you have excessive weight in your hips and thighs. Lack of growth, slow metabolism and glandular secretions, leading to make a person slow in general. In adults, Simon's disease is possible, which is atrophy or of body tissues because of lack of growth hormone. Yeah, that can make someone look like really frail and not really be able to put on any weight no matter what they ate, you know. Poor labor during childbirth, you know, that's another thing, you know. And also I was going to tell you too, I'm almost certain, yeah, I am right. When you also have a weakness in the hypothalamus, you can have a tendency to be a perfectionist. You know, I was there for a minute, I was like questioning myself, did I get it mixed up with the pituitary? But it is the hypothalamus, you know, that you can have a tendency to be a perfectionist, you know, when you have a weakness there. And I know that I have a weakness there too, and so that's why I have a tendency to feel that way too, you know. But okay, I'll keep going on down the list of the different hormones and glands. The next one is the adrenals. You know, the adrenals, it stimulates protective, these are the functions again. It stimulates protective inflammation in the body in response to antigens, regulates sodium reabsorption and potassium excretion, metabolism of carbohydrates and blood sugar regulation, maintains body equilibrium under stress, fear, fear and fright response, you know, the fight or flight, you know, responses. It speeds up metabolism under stress, sex hormone production, and partial regulation of thyroid glands. So see, you have that, again, that thyroid and the adrenals and the master glands are so connected, and you can really say that about all the glands to a one degree or another, you know. But, excuse me, some of the acute symptoms of hyperactive adrenal glands is sympathetic nerve stimulation, someone can be nervous or irritable, hyperactivity, hypertension, edema, bruises easily, drooping abdomen, baldness, high blood sugar, and rapid metabolism, you know. Yeah, those are all things of an overactive, you know, because it's kind of like if the adrenals sometimes are overactive, then that also possibly could mean the thyroid is too, you know. The chronic symptoms are the ones that, you know, is in the, you can call the hypo state, or the underactive, is fatigue, dizziness, allergies, excessive reaction to antigens, muscular weakness, mental lethargy, weight loss or gain, hypoglycemia. You see where it starts using those words hypo instead of hyper. Low blood pressure or dehydration, emotional irregularity or moodiness, depression, difficult getting started in the morning because, again, you're just slow to function, you know. Those are some of the things that you can experience in the hypo case. And it's very common. You can tell when someone has really major adrenal weakness whenever they're really easy to get dizzy, especially if we squat down and stand up too fast, or especially if your blood pressure is really low. Because again, underactive, it's going to be really low, and overactive, and if you have lots of inflammation in the body, it's going to be high blood pressure, you know. But okay, now let's talk about the thyroid. You know, I want to keep going so that I can, you know, keep this really informative and keep the time, you know, to a good shortness too, because I can get more people to watch when I don't make them too long, you know. All right, the thyroid, its main functions in the body are the production of thyroxine, stimulates the cell metabolism, increases blood sugar and blood sugar regulation, lowers blood calcium by depositing it in the bones. See, that's another reason why sometimes people get osteoporosis or bone loss, is not only is their body really acidic, so the body is using that calcium from the bones, the teeth, and the nails to neutralize some of that acidity in the body, but also when we have a weak parathyroid, then also with the weak thyroid, then we have poor calcium utilization, and we can't utilize the calcium that is available from our foods. And when we also don't have good absorption in the body, then we can't absorb our vitamins and minerals and all those things too, you know. So that's one reason why when you have a thyroid weakness, your issues with calcium are also weak too, you know. Stimulates cells to break down protein for energy rather than for cell growth. Regulates body temperature by controlling catabolism. Increases the reactivity of the nervous system to stress. So it increases your ability to react to stress, you know. And a lot of times, you know, people, when they're not able to react well enough to a stressful situation and be able to do something about it, you know, like take them out of that situation, it starts to affect their subconscious and deep down inside their body. And then they don't really realize how much it affected them till later, you know, because of that underactive of that gland, you know. Okay, so see, here next I'm going to talk about some of the weaknesses in the hyperactive state, or the acute and subacute symptoms. And it is goiter. You can have a goiter around this area, protruding eyeballs, rapid pulse, warm skin, weight loss from rapid metabolism, irritability, tremors of the fingers, excessive sweating, small tight breast, excessive energy, can't sit still, able to eat excessively with no weight gain, lump in throat, loss of hair. Those are all showing you those are hyperactive states. They're overactive, and it's because their metabolism is actually running at a rate that's higher than normal, because that's what happens when they're in that hyperactive state. And in the hypo state, which a lot of people are in, the weaker their thyroid gets, is lethargy, depression, drooping eyelids, heart palpitations, mental retardation, swelling eyelids, obesity, dry skin and hair, needs for lots of sleep, excessive sore throats, large flabby breast, criticism, I can't pronounce that word, and I'm not sure what that means. Actually, I'd have to go look it up. Calcium control lack means you have a lack of control of the calcium. Slow body temperature, always cold, a slow heartbeat, water retention, and high blood pressure. Yeah, so those are all some different things that you can experience from that. But now let's talk about the thymus. The thymus lies between the upper part of the sternum. It's like really right in here. It's like right between the breast, kind of in the center of the chest. That's the thymus. The thyroid is, right here. And then you have the parathyroid. You have two parathyroid glands on both sides of the thyroid. You have one side of the thyroid on one side of your neck and the other one on the other side. And remember, the glands, they can kind of be thought of like sponges. They're kind of a spongy type material, and so they're very easy to absorb toxins and chemicals and pollutions from our environment and from the things we eat and from medicines that we take, and especially the thyroid and the parathyroid. I see it all the time when people are exposed to too much toxins and chemicals and pollutions in their environment and in their diet and things that they're drinking and eating, then it will greatly affect the thyroid and the parathyroid too, But okay, the thymus, normal functions of the thymus are to stimulate production of lymphocytes. That's part to do with your lymphatic system. And so it really helps the production, the proper working of your lymphatic system. Stimulation of antibody production, part of the lymphatic system, like I was just saying. Larger size in children, it atrophies in adults. And the only reason why it does that is just because, the glands, they don't get the support they need because our master glands and those other glands aren't working right. So some of these glands, they just shrivel up and they become really, really underactive, It says blood supply stems from mammary or thyroid veins. Growth and sexual development stems from there. Resistance to infection, And when you have a thymus weakness in the acute stage, or the acute or subacute stage, or the hypoactive stage, you have overactivity of lymph tissues or phlegm. You'll produce more phlegm than normal, And then the hypo stage, or the subacute and the chronic and degenerative stage, is lowered resistance, allergies, stunted growth, lack of sexual development, small, tiny body, and weak, So and you see that a lot. That the thymus and the pituitary, when you see someone that's really short, and like a woman, for example, or a man, either one, that's really small and petite and just real, kind of short statured, it's either they have a really strong weakness in their pituitary, and they probably have it in their thymus too. And again, I can see that in an iridology reading, and I can be able to tell, But okay, we'll keep going on. Actually, it's kind of sad. He doesn't have the parathyroid in here. And so I'll just tell you what I know about the parathyroid. The parathyroid is responsible for proper connective tissue support, in our bodies. Like, it helps some of the symptoms you can have. Now, I'm not sure if it would be, I guess you can kind of think of it as in the acute and subacute stages, you would still experience some of these symptoms, but they would be real minute. And then as you get into the hypo stages or the really chronic and degenerative stages, these symptoms will be really drastic and really extreme. The parathyroid helps to regulate proper tissue connection. And it also is so connected in with the thyroid that it also helps with calcium utilization. Because when you have a major weakness in the parathyroid, as well as the thyroid, but also you can have it just in one or the other, then you'll have problems with proper calcium utilization and absorbing your calcium properly. And because it's so regulating with the proper tissue connection in our bodies, it can affect it can affect the elasticity and the ability for your skin to be able to have enough, enough of that collagen fibers to hold it up from sagging. You can have too much sagging when you have a weak parathyroid. You can also have ridges in the fingernails. You can have very little half moons. Half moon is the part right there, right by the cuticle of the fingernail or any of the nails. And if you see that little white area right there, then that's called a half moon. And if you don't have any, or have very, very little bit of them, or only have them on a couple fingers, then that means you have a weak parathyroid. And you can also have hemorrhoids. You can also have varicose veins, spider veins. All of those are signs of weak parathyroid. Also, prolapsing of the organs. That's a general sagging again. Sagging tissue, sagging skin, wrinkles a lot. Those are all signs of a parathyroid weakness. So let's keep going. I'll go on now to the pancreas. A lot of us know what the pancreas does as far as helping us with our sugar metabolism and our sugar regulation, but let's talk about some more functions of the pancreas. The pancreas, it helps the regulation of blood sugar levels throughout the secretion of glucagon, which increases the blood sugar level by accelerating the liver's rate of release. Decrease of blood sugar level is accompanied by secretion of insulin, which accelerates the transport of glucose into the cells of the body, particularly the muscles. Insulin also stimulates the liver to convert glucose into glycogen and to store it in the cells. And then the acute and subacute symptoms are the hyperactive. Again, I like to mention that with each one of them so that you can be aware of that, is low blood sugar, anxiety, sweating, increased heart rate, mental disorientation, bruises that don't heal, fatigue, thirst or dry mouth, frequent urination, itching of the pelvic or genital area, sudden weight change, or bruises easy. And then the chronic or degenerative symptoms, or the hypo conditions, is water not being absorbed by the kidneys, causing excessive urination and dehydration, loss of body sodium, excessive thirst, acidosis, weight gain or loss of memory, circulatory problems, sweet apple breath odor. Ain't that interesting, or isn't that? Excuse my southern incorrect language, Ain't's not a word, Thad. Bruises easy, those are the things that you can experience with a weak pancreas. Now let's talk about the ovaries. Ovaries they mostly help with the production of hormones, progesterone and estrogen. Now, in the acute symptoms, again, the hyperactive stage, acute or subacute, is more in the hyperactive stage. You can have between period pain. That means between your periods, I guess, you can have pain. Excessive menstrual bleeding, frequent menstruation, emotional instability, excessive vaginal discharge of not blood, just like normal secretion of your vaginal fluids. Cyst, strong sex motivation, excessive weight around the hips and buttocks, pain and fever, nausea, indigestion at menstruation. Isn't that interesting? Where when you're having your menstrual cycle, you can have nausea or indigestion, and then you can have large breasts again. Some of these things you'll see them there'll be some of the symptoms that will correlate with some of the other glands too, and that can make it kind of confusing sometimes which one it is, But then also the chronic or degenerative symptoms or the hypo conditions are the infertility, lack of secondary sex growth, late or lack of menses, painful menstruation, lack of sexual motivation. You know, you can see that a lot of those symptoms in that side, just like so many of these other glands, you can see that the gland is becoming so underactive that they're losing their drive. They're losing their ability to have some proper functioning in those functions of that gland. You know, and that happens all the time. You see that all the time. That's why they call it underactive. You know, it's not acting and responding the way it should, you know. But okay, now we'll talk about the testes in the men. Their normal function is production of sperm, secretion of testosterone, secondary sexual characteristics, regulation of sexual behavior, some involvement in protein buildup in the body. You know, that's interesting. Now, some of the acute or subacute symptoms or hyperactive symptoms you can experience is you can have excessive sex drive, deep voice, and excessive body hair. You know, see, I forget about that sometimes, that can be an overactive testosterone producing testes. You know, is it when you have lots of body hair and you're really deep voiced, you know, you can tell that. That's why a lot of those men, you know, they're really, really manly, you know. It's because their testes are really overly producing testosterone, you know. But it also says pain in groin area, swelling, large, excessively muscular body. And then the hypo conditions, or the weakening of that gland, and the chronic or degenerative symptoms is infertility, lack of sexual motivation, low weight, weak muscular, swelling. You know, those are things, and that's what I've noticed too. Sometimes, see, I have a weakness in my hormone area and also in that area too, and I've noticed that for myself too. No matter how much I try, it's hard for me to gain muscle a lot of times. If I do, I mean, of course, granted, I haven't worked out for several months consistently to really see what I could do, but the little bit I have done in the past, I really never seen any gains, you know, because I guess that's the reason why I didn't have enough testosterone production to gain the proper. I even tried it when I was eating a lot of, you know, animal-based products, and I still really couldn't maintain the muscle gain that I got from working out, you know. But okay, I'll keep going. Next is the pineal gland. It was probably one of the ones I should, I guess, mention a little earlier with the other glands in our head, you know, but that's the last one on his chart here, you know, in his book. And so I guess I overlooked it earlier, you know, and I could have went to that one and mentioned it earlier, but I know it's okay, you know. But the pineal gland, the gland begins to shrink and degenerate at age 7. The bioclock that regulates menstrual cycle, sensitivity to electromagnetic radiation from the sun. It regulates body cycles, involved in brain environmental control, part of the body's sodium and potassium control, in that this gland regulates adrenal secretion of aldosterone, psychosomatic center, fear-regulating master glands. So see, he's even saying that the pineal can be considered, I guess, one of the master glands too. You know, so, you know, it's very interesting how, you know, all of these different glands can have different purposes, you know. But okay, some of the hyper conditions, or acute and subacute, is overstimulation of sex organs, long menstrual cycle, mental problems, hypochondria, and adrenal problems. And then chronic symptoms or hypo conditions are irregular periods, short menstrual cycle, mental problems, adrenal problems, excessive worry, and fear. And then also talking about how it has a tendency to shrink and degenerate at age 7. Well, that's probably for a lot of people that are living in a way that is not supportive to our genetics to help them to continue to strengthen as we get older and older, and instead they're doing things to make their genetics to become weaker, because a lot of us are raised on these poor lifestyles and diets, you know. So I think that's where it goes back to, you know, we probably could have better functioning of these glands if we are raised from a young age on these right kind of lifestyles and diets to help these glands to function better from an early age, and also to help our genetics to be stronger. You know, so that's another interesting way of, I guess, that I have of looking at it, you know. But one more thing I wanted to mention to you about all the glands and about the hyper or hypo conditions is I heard Dr. Morse mention one day, he said that when the gland is in the acute or subacute stage or hyper stage, you can still sometimes experience some chronic weaknesses too, because you have a little bit of fluctuation. And sometimes, so what he's pretty much saying is that sometimes the gland can fluctuate and it can still show chronic signs or chronic symptoms as well as hyper symptoms, or hypo as well as hyper. But he said that once the gland gets far enough chronic and gets into the hypo stage, you won't really experience much of the hyper states of that, because the gland has gotten so weak that it's not really experiencing much of those hyper conditions anymore. I mean, you may some of them sometimes, especially in our healing journey, when we're trying to get all of the glands that are in the hypo stage, we're trying to get them all back to the acute stage, or the hyperactive stage, because that's where you have to get them back to when they've gotten really hypo to have proper function again. It's just you're trying not to let them go too far, excessively hyper. See, it's all about the extremes. The hypo is way, way down here and the hyper is way up here. Well, you want it to more, like this, where it fluctuates just a little bit like this and it never goes to the extremes. But isn't such things with all life? That's the way it is with all life. We're always trying to find that middle ground. We're trying not to get too far out of whack one way or the other, even with our emotions and our feelings and all these things, So that's a good explanation of that to remember too, But okay, well, that's all I have to talk about with the normal functions and the symptoms you can experience from that information I had to share with you about the glands. Now let me go over my bullet points and see if I missed anything that I may want to still mention about this great subject. And if I didn't, then I will be letting you guys go today. And I hope you enjoyed this talk. Okay, I went on and I said I will also be talking about how much the glands can be affected by chemicals and other toxins from our poor lifestyles. Yeah, I mentioned that earlier. I talked about that one too, and that is so true, because those glands are like sponges again. And then I said, lastly, I will talk just a little bit about what are some of the things we can do to help our glands to work better. Oh yeah, I can talk about that. Is that there is many different herbs that you can use that are really good for the glands, like Schisandra berries and gotu kola and ginkgo biloba, and several of the different glands the herbs that help to increase the circulation and the proper function to our heads, and also like your ginsengs, like Siberian ginseng, and some of your adaptogen herbs like ashwagandha and astragalus. And there's so many different great herbal formulas out there and herbs that we can use. Some that I really like is Dr. Morse's formulas for the brain. It's the upper circulation, and then the brain and nerve, and then also the pituitary formula. Those are really good, and they all have some of those herbs I've already mentioned, plus many more, too. And then also remember, guys, we can do some things that are very nourishing to our hypothalamus and our master glands and the rest of our glands, is spend more time in nature around the Earth's frequencies. The glands are very sensitive to the frequencies of the earth, and also the frequencies that we vibrate as our emotions and feelings and our spirit is vibrating at. And that can affect all of our bodies. And then also what we're around, the environment we're around, like the vibration of the environment that we're around, the local area that we're around, the people that we're around, the job that we're around. All these things can affect us because there are certain type of energies that can be hard on our hypothalamus and our pituitary. And it's the same way for the Wi-Fi, the cell phones, the radio towers, the electricity that's going everywhere in our homes and our buildings and where we work. All of those things can affect the hypothalamus and the pituitary very easily. So we need to protect ourselves this day and age more and more. They're starting to even create underwear to protect our reproductive organs, and even beanies and hats that you can put over your head that will help protect your head, and things you can put around your neck and stuff to protect you from these electromagnetic frequencies. And you can also wear protective necklaces. Like I wear a necklace that I have that's made out of shunganite and other stones that helps to protect my throat chakra and my throat, my thyroid, my parathyroid, and also it hangs over my heart too, so it protects my heart some. So there's different things you can do to protect yourself. You can have different stones around your home. You can have argon generators. You can do several different things to protect yourself of that. But also more things that are really good for the hypothalamus and the pituitary is getting some sun. Sunbathing and air bathing and meditating, that's always good for our master glands, because you're giving them the great natural frequencies and energy vibrations that helps to soothe them instead of irritate them. Because they're very receptive and sensitive to the energies of the world, but the man-made energies are very irritating and harmful if they're exposed to those energies for too long. That's why it's not good to always use this and have this like this all the time, because that's going straight in our head and affecting those glands, And then also some light exercise is good, some, again, deep breathing, light weightlifting even, several of those things are good because it can help us to produce a little bit more growth hormone, a little bit more things to help to those glands to work better. But again, you don't want to do too much if you're doing lots of detoxing, because you don't want to create too much lactic acid or create too much, make yourself too sore or anything, So that's some of the stuff that you can do to help that glands to work better. So those are some of the things I can think of to keep it real short and sweet about things that can help our glands. Of course, there's many other things we can do that will also help the adrenals, the thyroid. The thyroid, you want to get plenty of iodine after you've gotten the thyroid clean enough, or as you're getting it clean enough, because as you're helping the toxins to come out of the thyroid, you want to replace it with proper iodine that you can get from like sea vegetables and things like that. There's several different great herbs to help our parathyroid, like horsetail, because it's high in silica. Also, white oak bark. White oak bark is excellent for the parathyroid. Very, very good. And that's the top ingredient in one of Dr. Morse's bone and connective tissue support formulas. And then also, butcher's broom can help the parathyroid. There's several different things that can help these glands. Let's see, what else is some more? Of course, the pancreas is just helping the regulation of your blood sugar regulation, and there is several different herbs that will help the pancreas. I just can't think off the top of my head which ones those are, but Dr. Morse again has a great pancreas formula, and then also, let's see, the thymus. I'm not sure what really helps. I think it's some of the same herbs, because Dr. Morse has a formula called thyroid and thymus. So that formula helps the thymus as well as the thyroid. And let's see, the adrenals. Oh yeah, there's lots of great herbs for the adrenals. You can do ashwagandha, astragalus, a lot of those ones that help reduce stress in the body. But also just your stress management is so important for the adrenals. But also, again, the adrenals rely so much on the production of the right hormones from the pituitary and the hypothalamus that it really goes back to helping them as well. And it really, because the adrenals are so regulatory with the fight or flight response, we have to really watch our stress levels. Stress and anxiety is probably one of the biggest reasons why our adrenals are so dysfunctional. So that's very important, and then that will help the adrenals to work better. And then let's see, what else could I talk about? Oh, the reproductive hormones, like the testes and or the glands, reproductive glands, the testes and the ovaries. That is a lot to do with the condition of how dirty your bowels are. Men and women have in their bodies an area in our large intestines called the sigmoid flexure. It's the part at the bottom of the sigmoid that bends down. And that area, if you have a genetic weakness in that area, which that's where all of our genetic weaknesses are passed down from our mother and father, especially your mother, when you're in the stage 2 weeks to 6 weeks development in the embryonic stage in your mom's womb. That's when all the genetic weaknesses are passed down, and they're deposited in the primitive gut tube. That is what the organs and glands come out of, that primitive gut tube. And so all of those genetic weaknesses that are deposited in the membrane of the primitive gut tube, they get transferred to those organs and glands that come out of that area. So he could see a direct neurological connection from that area in the bowel. And when you have a weakness or a heavy congestion of acids in that area of the bowel, it can make you feel symptoms in that organ or gland that's associated with that area of the bowel. And so that means that the sigmoid flexure can affect, when you look at the iridology chart, it can affect your testes or your ovaries, and also your spleen. And when you have a weakness in the spleen, you can have a tendency to over worry and have anxiety. And when you have hormonal challenges or menstrual challenges for you ladies, and lots of things that men can go through too, it's because of that weakness in the sigmoid flexure. And I've seen this many times in iridology readings. And it's very, very common, actually, especially in women more than even men sometimes. And so I really strongly suggest you, because all of the sponges are affected from the condition of the bowels, from that neural arch connection. So that's why it's so important. If you really want to help the master glands and all these glands to function the best they can, then start working on cleaning out your bowels. And then start helping the head to start draining, so the master glands will work better. And then when you start getting all the other channels of eliminations flowing, then all of your glands, all of your organs, they're going to just start flowing and working the way that they should, you know. So that's really a good way to end this call or this conversation with you guys, because it really just shows that it all goes back to proper cleaning of our body and using herbs and other things that we can use as our body gets cleaner to support these glands function and these organs functions in our body. You know, so just keep working on your detox journey, guys. Keep trying to eat as mucus-free as possible. And if you can't eat mucus-free all the time, try to eat at least mucus-lean. Just try not to let yourself go too much and get too stressed out and eat a bunch of stuff we don't need to eat sometimes. I know it's very easy to do, and I can sympathize and understand, and I can relate. I've been there many times. I didn't realize how much of how addicted to food I really was until I really started working on eating those cleaner foods on a regular basis, you know, especially when you're stressed and irritable and maybe going through some challenging times in your life, you know, because we so much emotionally eat, you know. So just keep working on it, guys. And I've really enjoyed this talk today with you all. And I hope it was really power-packed and filled with so much great information, and it was so greatly beneficial to you all. And if you ever have any questions for me, if you ever have anything I can help you with, if you would like an iridology reading, if you would like some coaching or whatever that you possibly would need that I could help you with, just reach out to me, send me a message. And I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon or a wonderful evening wherever you may be, whenever you're watching this great video. You know, but much love to you all and much light. And I hope your journeys to Wellville will continue to be balanced spiritually, mentally, and physically. Namaste, my friends, and much love to you all. And until next time, take care. Bye-bye.